to Bible Study Hub. I'm your host, Anne, and I'm just so glad that you're with us on this wild and crazy night that we're having here in Bible Study Hub land. Just so everybody's laughing along with me, and I have some editing to do for YouTube. All right, well, let's get into the text and hope that things pick up from here and go just a little bit better. Last week we saw that Jacob, because we're in the book of Genesis here, we did like 26 and 27, I think it was last week, that Jacob received the birthright blessing from his dad Isaac, even though Isaac thought that he was giving it to Esau. Now, God had chosen Jacob, and God had told his mother Rebekah before the twins were even born that it was the younger that was the chosen, that the older would serve the younger. But Isaac, I don't know if he just wasn't privy to that information or what happened there, but he was going to bestow the birthright on to Esau. And Jacob was actually the rightful owner of the birthright. Everybody says, oh, he tricked Esau. No, he didn't. Esau sold it to him fair and square. Jacob owned it. It should have been given to him. So God is sovereign, and in God's sovereignty, it all works out that the right boy gets the birthright, and thus the Abrahamic covenant is passed to him. But it was a little bit harrowing last week. So let's pick it up in chapter 28, verse 1. And this is right after Rebekah has said to Isaac, who is now aware of the fact that Jacob, impersonated Esau and had him give him the birthright. He did trick his father. He didn't trick Esau, but he did trick his dad. She said, after she realized that Esau wanted to kill his brother for this, that she said to Isaac, look, I can't take it if Jacob were to marry one of those Canaanite women like Esau had. So she goes, we've got to do something. I'll die if he marries one of those. So that's where we are right now as we pick it up in this chapter. So chapter 28, verse 1. Then Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and directed him, you must not take a wife from the Canaanite women. Okay, so he was completely on the same page. I don't think that Isaac knew that Rebekah's main concern was that Esau was going to murder his brother as soon as Isaac died, but it was definitely a concern about the whole Canaanite situation here. And so she brings this up to Isaac. Isaac says, I agree. He calls Jacob in and he says, look, I don't want you marrying the pagans. And for those of you who are like, what's the big deal? I mean, the Canaanite women, weren't there any nice girls out there that happened to be Canaanite? And the answer to that is actually the problem was that the Canaanites worshiped false gods. I mean, if you want to just boil it down to the lowest common denominator, that's it. And the Bible tells us that those false gods are always inspired by and sort of run by demons. So to worship a false god is in actuality to worship the demon behind the false god. So you have demonic activity, you have demons insisting on certain rites and rituals in the worship that often involve human sacrifice, mutilation, switching back and forth of genders. I mean, there's all these different things that these demons do in this pagan worship. This cannot become part of this line, Israel, that the Messiah is going to come through. So it was incumbent on the Jewish people to not allow that to come in. And of course, if you think ahead to, many years later, when there's a kingdom of Israel, they actually do begin to intermarry with these people. They bring those gods into their mix, and God judges the nation of Israel, both the northern and the southern kingdom for this. It's a really big deal. I didn't plan to get off on that. Sorry. But I just want to make sure that you all understand that it's not like oh, by the way, it's actually huge. All right, let's go on to verses 2 to 5 then of chapter 28. Arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take as your wife from there one of the daughters of Laban, your mother's brothers. So basically, marry your cousin is what that amounts to. God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, that you may become a company of peoples. May he give the blessing of Abraham to you and to your offspring with you, that you may take possession of the land of your sojournings that God gave to Abraham. Thus Isaac sent Jacob away, and he went to Padan Aram to Laban, the son of Bethuel, the Aramean, the brother of Rebekah, Jacob and Esau's mother. Okay, so if there was any doubt that the Abrahamic covenant was now passed to Jacob, Isaac just restated, but with a lot more clarity and a lot more detail. Yes, I mean, he even mentions Abraham. The promise made to Abraham is passed now to you, Jacob. And I love this because Isaac truly had been deceived by his son. He had been tricked by him. You can listen to last week's if you're interested in all of, like, was it right? Was it wrong? Did God have special grace for that? We kind of covered all of that. But Isaac could have been humiliated and angry and shamed and not wanted to give it to Jacob after all of that happened. And he doesn't. So you can see he is a man of God. I mean, Isaac is as well, and he does the right thing here. So he sends him back to Rebekah's brother Laban. And Jacob's going to end up marrying two of his first cousins. You notice also the land is mentioned. The land is always part of the Abrahamic covenant. It is a huge piece of it. The Jewish people do rightfully own the land that God gave them, and someday they will own all of it and they will possess all of it. We're still waiting for that day, but we support Israel and the Jewish people in their land. It belongs to them because God promised it to them. All right, chapter 20, verses 6-9. Now Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him away to Padan Aram to take a wife from there, and that as he blessed him, he directed him, you must not take a wife from the Canaanite women. Remember, Esau had taken 2 Canaanite wives right before we got into the meat of last week's story. Verse 7, and that Jacob had obeyed his father and mother and had gone to Padan Aram. So when Esau saw that the Canaanite women did not please Isaac his father, Esau went to Ishmael, or probably the tribes of Ishmael, and took as his wife, besides the wives he had, Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, sister of Nebaioth. Okay, I have a question for you, group. And I want you to weigh in on this, and I'm going to tell you up front, this is one of those, I don't know the answer to it. I don't think anybody really knows the answer, but I just want to see where you land, what you think, and what you have to say, because you guys always blow me away with your insights, things that I often don't think of. Was this Esau trying to please his father, or was this Esau trying to spite his father? So go ahead and start typing. I will read your comments in a minute. So what we have here is Esau kind of looking at the situation. He sees that his father said to Jacob, don't do what your brother did. I mean, he doesn't say it in those words, but that's kind of how it lands, right? Because Esau had married 2 Canaanite women. He said, don't do that. I want you to go back to my family, your mother's family, our family. I want you to marry a cousin from that place. So Esau then goes off to not the Canaanites, but the Ishmaelites, and they've had many, many descendants by this time, and 12 princes and all of this, and he gets a wife from there. So what do you think? Was he trying to please his father, or do you think he was trying to spite his father? So let me run over here to the comments and see what you have to say. Carolyn says, it wouldn't surprise me that he was trying to spite his father. That sounds like something Esau would do. Okay, so Carolyn is basically saying, based on the character of a guy who would sell his birthright that he despised, have no spiritual interest at all, and then wants to murder his brother, is willing to wait until his dad dies to do it. she's saying that doesn't sound like the kind of guy that would be like trying to please his dad. That sounds like the kind of person that would spite. So that's great. I don't disagree with that at all. Roberta says maybe he's trying to undo the wrong he did earlier and trying to get back in his father's good grace. Okay, so Roberta takes the opposite side of it and says, you know what? Maybe he's like, this really went badly and it continues to go badly. Maybe somehow, some way I can salvage something here. And I could please my father by not marrying a Canaanite. But then he goes off to Ishmael. So, all right. So we have, I like that. We have one person who's like, nah, he was spiting him. Then we have another one like, well, maybe not. Maybe he was actually trying to please. Anybody else have, you're real quiet out there tonight. You're real quiet. I love it when you comment. Emily says, I'm feeling that he is competing with Jacob. He seems to always have been in conflict with the godly Jacob. And that is another interesting point. The whole like sibling rivalry and competition. So he goes to some family to get a wife. He says, I'll go to some family and get myself a wife too. Excellent insight there. I had not thought of that. Lori says, if it's good for Jacob, it's good for him. Okay. So she's taking more of a generalized approach. Like maybe he didn't realize that it's not okay just to get any old family member. Like the Ishmaelites don't worship the one true God. So still not good. Like Laban's family would. So maybe that's what it is. All right. Well, thank you so much for commenting on that. I always love to read what you have to say. We're not going to hear anything more about Esau for quite a while here. He will reappear in another couple chapters, but for the moment, it's like we take Esau, we send him off to whatever it is he's doing with however many wives he's taking now, and we're going to focus now on Jacob and Jacob's journey away from home. Remember, he's being sent away. Alan pointed out last week that he believes that Rebecca probably never got to see her son Jacob again. And that just kind of ripped my heart out because I can't even fathom that as a mother of two children, one son. I can't imagine never seeing them again. So this is kind of a heart-wrenching story. Well, verses 10 to 11, Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran. And he came to a certain place and stayed there that night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. Okay. Under his head, by the way, is probably better translated at his head. And the reason I'm saying that is because I do remember when I was even just a little child. This is one of these stories that if you're raised in Sunday school and you have Bible picture books, this is a story that is very often included for children and for good reason. It's a great story, but they always had a picture of Jacob like lying down with his head on a stone. And just remember as a kid thinking, why did he do that? I mean, wouldn't it just be more comfortable just to lie down on the ground than to use a stone for a pillow? But if you think about it, like at his head, it probably was a little bit more either he was like propped up, so he was kind of half sitting up, maybe with a larger rock behind him. That's possible. Or maybe he had set up some stones at his head for protection, maybe to obscure his body just so that he would feel like he was a little more camouflaged in case anybody was. He's all by himself. So that also is a little bit weird, but we'll talk more about that later. All right. The next passage, you are going to see the word behold several times. Every time you see that word, it's kind of like the writer that under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit is going, wow, look. that's kind of the feel of it. So I want you to be on the lookout for behold, wow. Here we go. Verses 12 to 15. And he dreamed. So he's sleeping now. And behold, wow, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, wow, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. This is an amazing dream. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and to your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. And in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, again, wow, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Oh my goodness, that is loaded with a lot of beholds and a lot of wows. But there's three things I kind of want to point out here. First of all, we have this ladder connecting heaven and earth. And honestly, ladder is one of those words that's never used again throughout the entire Old Testament. There is no other instance of this word that we translate ladder, nor is there a lot in like ancient literature to go off of. So a lot of people say it would maybe be better translated more like a staircase than an actual ladder. I mean, you picture a ladder and you think, did the angels have wings? And if so, were they like hitting each other as they were going up and down? Were they stepping on each other's hands on the ladder? So probably it would have made more sense to have a staircase and a ladder. And I also kind of like how this artist has depicted Jacob sort of propped up on a stone rather than using it as a pillow. So I just thought that was kind of a good picture to show, just to give us a little bit of an idea of what this probably looked like. But the more important thing is why this ladder is there. Back in Genesis chapter 3, we had a disconnect that happened between God and man when Adam and Eve sinned. Prior to that, there was fellowship. God walked and talked with them in the cool of the evening. There was no sin to break that fellowship. But as soon as they sinned, we had broken fellowship immediately. And quite honestly, the only way that we sinful humans will ever have some kind of method of getting to God, some ladder, some staircase, metaphorically speaking, the only way is if God himself extends that down to us. We can't make the ladder. We can't build a staircase. It is purely grace, and it is 100% God in heaven looking down on compassion on sinners like me and you and saying, I'm going to make a way for us to again establish fellowship. More about that in just a moment. But before we get to that, did you notice as we read that passage that God is seen? It said, behold, God is standing at the top of this ladder or the top of this staircase. And it hit me, something I'd never thought about before. I thought, wait a minute, God is standing and Jacob sees him. God is a spirit. This is the word Yahweh. This is the title God uses for himself. Father God uses for himself, Yahweh, the Almighty God. Jacob sees him and he is standing, which requires a body, right, to do. So as I thought about it, I thought, I bet this was another pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus Christ. And if it is, and I believe that it is, this is just another element in the Bible where we see God as one being, but three distinct persons. And you're seeing the second person of the Trinity being called Yahweh, being called God, because Jesus is God. So that just kind of hit me out of the blue. I had honestly never even given that a thought before, but I wanted to mention that because I think it's really cool. And then thirdly, God officially now himself bestows the Abrahamic covenant onto Isaac. So I'm sorry, onto Jacob. Isaac unwittingly passed it down. Then he on purpose passed it down to Jacob. Now God gives the whole thing. And by the way, if you see like God refer to your father Abraham and you're thinking, wait, Jacob's father was Isaac. Isaac's father was Abraham. In the Hebrew language, there's no word for grandfather, grandson, grandmother, granddaughter. It's all just daughter and son and that type of thing. So when you see that, it can definitely apply to many generations removed, but they'll still say father or they'll still say son or daughter or mother or whatever. All right, back to that latter thing. Remember, we were talking just a second ago about that discussion, how God has to reach down to us, how he has to stem that tide because of our sin. In John chapter 1, the Gospel of John chapter 1, Jesus is in this story, he is calling his disciples to come and follow him. And if you remember, there was one disciple named Nathaniel. We don't know a whole lot about Nathaniel. He's not one of the ones that was in Jesus's inner circle that we hear his name mentioned a lot, but he was one of the 12 and he was called to follow Jesus. And I want you to hear what Jesus has to say, because Jesus takes this passage that Nathaniel 100% would know inside and out. I mean, all the Jewish little boys and girls were taught this story as well. So this is something that he would recognize. Listen to how Jesus interprets this story. It kind of gives you goosebumps. So in John chapter 1, 47 to 51, Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him and said of him, "Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom there is no deceit." And Nathanael said to him, "How do you know me?" Jesus answered him, "Before Philip called you," another disciple, "when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." Nathanael answered him, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God," messianic term. "You are the King of Israel." Also, messianic designation. So Nathanael just said to Jesus, "You are the Messiah." He said it in two separate ways, but the same message. Jesus answered him, "Because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? You will see greater things than these." Now, this is the one that just gives you goosebumps. And he said to him, "Truly, truly, I say to you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending on a ladder, a staircase? No, on the Son of Man, Jesus's own messianic designation for himself. You will see the same picture that is pictured in Genesis chapter 28 with the angels up and down the staircase that stems God to man. He says, guess what? I'm that staircase. I am the liaison between God and man. I am what makes it possible for you to have a relationship that was broken because of sin, to have that restored with God again. I am that entity. I am that staircase. I am that person. That just gives me goosebumps. Let me run over to the comments real quick here. Yeah, okay. I know, Emily blows my mind. I have goosebumps. Blows my mind. And this is, by the way, I just have to insert this too. This is another reason that we know that the Bible in its entirety is inspired by the Holy Spirit, written down exactly, perfectly the way God wanted it, because it is superintended by one author. There's just no way you can throw as many human authors together on this book and expect that you will have this type of cohesion. It's impossible. It would be absolutely astronomically impossible. The only way that you get this type of puzzle pieces fitting exactly together in the exact right way is if one author is superintending over the whole thing. That's exactly what just happened here. All right, well, let's go on to verses 16 to 17 of Genesis 28. Then Jacob, 16, 17, yeah. Okay, then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it." He's just saying, I laid down, propped up on a rock, and I didn't know that God was here. I mean, he is in awe right now. I just imagine him waking up and sort of, oh, his heart is just pounding. And he was afraid and said, "How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven." Jacob recognizes he's on holy ground, that he has seen God himself, and his response to this is worship. And just to point out again, Jacob is not an evil, conniving charlatan. He is a righteous man. He is a man who loves God and serves God. And this will be continued to see. Not he's perfect. He doesn't do everything perfect, but he is not how many commentators and Sunday school books portray him, as some sort of like two evil sons, Esau terrible, Jacob also terrible, just in a different way. No, no, no. That's not how the Bible actually portrays him if you look at it. And this is just another backdrop that we can see that against. Verses 18 to 22. So early in the morning, Jacob took the stone that he had put under his head and set it up for a pillar and poured oil on the top of it. He anoints this rock. He called the name of that place Beth El, which means, by the way, house of God. Anytime you see El at the end, that stands for God, Elohim. So Daniel, guess what? His name also has the word God written right in it. It's just a little hint for you in Hebrew. But the name of the city was Luz at the first. So it had been called Luz. He renames it Bethel, house of God. Then Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. And this stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house. And all that you give me, I will give a full tenth to you. Okay. Does that strike anybody as just strange? I mean, we just got done saying Jacob is a righteous man. He has this dream. God comes to him in this dream. He shares with him that I am stemming the tide between you and me. I am making a way. And Jacob worships him and he sets up a stone and he anoints it as this reminder of this holy place. And then he goes off and says, well, if you'll do this, and this for me, then I'll do this for you. And he bargains with God. Does that not seem a little odd? Well, I think it seems very strange. I spent quite a bit of time thinking this through because I thought typically when things don't add up, usually there's something I'm missing. And if I think about it hard enough and I pray about it hard enough, normally I'll figure it out eventually. So I don't know for sure, but this is my best guess as to what's going on. We don't get facial expressions in the text. We don't get inflection of the voice in the text. All you get are the words on the page. You add all of those things. You add the inflection, you add the facial expressions and the gestures and all of those things yourself. So that's the thing that makes it hard when you only have something written down. Of course, that's adequate for us, but sometimes we kind of wish we could have known, what did they sound like? What did they look like when they said this? What words did they emphasize or de-emphasize? Because it might help us even understand the text a little bit better. But if you think about it, even in the English language, the word if, when we use this, it's not always like this major conditional thing that we're doing. For instance, I could say to you, hey, come in to visit. Don't worry about making dinner when I get there. We'll just go out. Don't cook for me. And you could say, no, 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 I'm going to cook for you. And I'd say, no, I don't want you to go to all that trouble. I will be more than happy to take you out for dinner. You pick the place, I'm paying. And the person says, no, I want to make you dinner. I'm going to make you dinner. I might say, well, if you insist. Now, I just said if you insist, but you all know what I meant, right? Like, I'm not putting a condition on this. What I mean is, I guess I'm not going to talk you out of it. I believe that you are going to do what you said. So, okay, I'm actually agreeing to it when I say that. Or you might say, I'm going to the store to pick up milk and bread. And I might say, oh, hey, if you're going to the store, could you also bring home chocolate? Because I'm out. I need some. I don't mean like, if I don't believe you, I don't know if you're going to go to the store, but if you go to the store, but more almost like, well, since you're going, if you're going to the store, could you pick up some chocolate for me? We do that a lot in the English language. I really believe that that's more of the inflection of what we have going on here. I don't think that Jacob is coming out of this worship session where he's absolutely like in fear of God, amazed at God, blown away by God, understands what just happened. And then in the next second, he's going, well, I don't know. I mean, if you'll do this for me, then I'll do this for you. It just that doesn't add up to me. It's very, very incongruent. So if we read it again and we read it more like the, well, if you insist sort of inflection, I think it makes more sense. So let me just kind of go back and do that for you. And let's see if this works. So I'm going back to verse, I think it's 20. And you can see him going, If God will be with me and keep me in the way that I go and give me bread to eat and clothes to wear so that I come again to my Father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. And this stone which I set up for a pillar shall be God's house, and all that you give me, I will give a full tenth to you. You read it that way, and all of a sudden, it all makes sense. So that's how I personally take it, and that's how I believe Jacob meant it. But again, we're not told for sure. I'm always honest with you. When I'm not 100% sure, I will always tell you that. Maybe he had a momentary lapse. I just don't see it adding up in the text for me. You can make your own decision. Well, let's move on to chapter 29, verses 1 through 3. We're just going to get into a little bit of 29 here. Then Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. As he looked, he saw a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep lying beside it. For out of that well the flocks were watered. The stone on the well's mouth was large. And when all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep and put the stone back in its place over the mouth of the well. Here's probably what that well looked something like. So you can kind of picture it was probably built up like that. And then this one obviously doesn't have a big round stone on the top, but you can see how you could easily cover it with a large round stone and how heavy a stone like that would actually be. This is about what we're doing. And by the way, if you're thinking, oh, is this the same well that Isaac, the servant of Isaac and Abraham, found Rebecca at? I'm getting dry. Talking a mile a minute here. It is not the same well. Remember, Rebecca went down into kind of a cistern area, had to walk down and up. It's a completely different thing. Plus, it's in a slightly different area. So this is like way out of town. This is not in the town. But it's a well, and wells were like oil. They were really, really valuable in this arid climate. You had to have access to them in order to function. And so you can see here that Jacob kind of stumbles upon this well, and people are gathering to wait for the watering of the sheep. So let's go on to verses 4 through 8. Jacob said to them, "My brothers, where do you come from?" And they said, "We are from Haran." Haran? Jacob's like, "That's where I'm going. I must be close." He said to them, "Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor?" They said, "We know him." He said to them, "Is it well with him?" They said, "It is. It is well." And then they said, "And see, Rachel, his daughter, is coming with the sheep." He said, this is Jacob speaking, "Behold, it is still high day. It is not time for the livestock to be gathered together. Water the sheep. Go. Pasture them." He's like, "Get out. I want to talk to her." I don't know if that's what he's saying. But they said, "We cannot until all of the flocks are gathered together and the stone is rolled from the mouth of the well. Then we can water the sheep." So Jacob learns he's really close to his destination. He has to be so happy. And in God's perfect timing, once again, here we have the daughter of Laban, his first cousin. Remember, his dad said, "Go marry your first cousin." And here she comes. I mean, he had to just be amazed. She's a shepherdess. But he says something really weird in verse 7. Did you catch this? He says, "Behold, it is still high day. It's not time to water the livestock. Water the sheep and go pasture them." Well, best guess as to what this is all about is probably somebody owned this well that was very protective of it. And so once a day, they would have their servants, or they would permit these shepherds to roll the stone off, and then all the surrounding people that were grazing their sheep and livestock would water their flocks. And then when they were done, that cover went back on. So what's happening here is that they are lining up for this. Now, if you know anything about sheep, sheep will eat grass down to dirt. Like, I'm not a farmer. I know it's a surprise because I look so farmy, but I don't know anything about livestock, but I have heard that cattle will, graze, but leave some so that it will continue to grow. But that sheep are like a razor blade across the landscape, and they will literally eat it to the dirt until it's gone, and it will never grow again unless you replant. So around this well, guess what there isn't? There's no grass here to eat because the sheep would have eaten all of it. So Jacob's looking around going, this makes absolutely no sense. These sheep should be out eating right now. Like, he is a farmer, right? I know sheep. I know when they are supposed to be eating and when he's like, what are you waiting for? Give them the water and get back out there and get these guys to pasture. They need to be eating to keep them healthy and get them fat. And the guys say, we can't. It's not time yet. Everybody is coming to line up. You imagine they do this every day. Everybody's got their sheep and their cows, and there's flies everywhere, and it's hot, and there's bleating, and there's mooing, and so it's a mess, and they have to stand there and wait. So Rachel is presumably coming to get her place in line. She's got her flock with her. She's going to have to do this too. I'm sure she does this every single day. And so Jacob is told, yeah, that's not how it works here. We have to wait for somebody to either let us know or for other shepherds to come in and move that rock off. Well, let's see what Jacob does. While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. Verse 10. Now, as soon as Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, in case you're not clear, Jacob came near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel, double cheek kiss if it's a greeting, and wept aloud. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman and that he was Rebekah's son. And she ran and told her father. Okay, I just have to say this. You saw the size of that well, right? And we picture what a big round stone would look like to cover that. And it took multiple people to roll this stone off. And Jacob takes it off himself. I say this because, again, if you look at the details of the Bible, it informs how we formulate our thoughts about certain Bible characters. If you think of Jacob from a couple chapters ago as a quiet, mild, gentle sort of mama's boy that stays in the tent and makes bread and stew all day, that's not a man's man. That is not a guy who's going to be rolling an enormous rock off of a well because he's had enough and he wants to water some sheep and he doesn't think this makes any sense. He's really strong. And I kind of like the chutzpah. He's like, yeah, I'm just going to do this. People like that. They're like, I'll take care of it. I'll just do it myself. And they do. And he does. So he had just had this dream, that God said, I'm not going to leave you. I'm with you. He sees that God is already keeping his promise. He sends his first cousin out. I don't know if it was love at first sight. He is going to end up marrying Rachel. We'll hear about this in the next bit of chapter 29 and then into the next coming chapters, how this all goes, because it's a harrowing story as well if you're not used to it. But he springs into action. He shows this woman he's good, but I notice all the parallels between this story and the story of the servant looking for a wife for Isaac. And there's something glaring that is not the same at all. I don't know if any of you thought about this or picked up on it, but you remember when the servant came, he came with an entourage. He had 10 camels. They were loaded with bracelets and nose rings and gifts and precious jewels and all these things. Jacob has nothing. Isaac sent him out with nothing. Okay, I have to admit to you, I thought and thought and thought about this one. I said normally I can figure it out if I think about it long enough. I couldn't figure this one out. Does anybody else know? Do you want to take a venture on it? I don't know if I wrote that question out. I don't think I did. If you have a thought, I'm wide open. Why did Isaac do that? Why did he not send Jacob with the bride? Go marry your cousin. This is arranged marriages. This is dowries. It's bride prices. He comes with zero. He's all by himself. He has nothing with him to give her. I just think it's strange. Let me run over here to the comment. Okay, yeah. people are just saying, oh, okay, it's kind of making sense here. Well, if you have a comment on that, like I said, I'm wide open. I don't know why. I just don't know why that was the case. I think it's fascinating. Let's go on. Well, and we'll probably end with this. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. Jacob told Laban all these things, and Laban said to him, surely you are my bone and my flesh. You are my relative, he says. We share a DNA. And he stayed with him a month. So Laban does remember the last time that a family member was introduced. He remembers the entourage. He remembers the camels. He remembers the jewelry. And he too probably was kind of like, interesting why you came as like a dirt poor homeless guy. Really, really fascinating stuff. Well, Jacob will stay for a month, and then we're going to find out that he falls in love with one of his cousins. And yes, it is okay in these days to marry your first cousin. This is before genetics got too many mutations that you don't want to do that anymore. But in these days, it was fine to do something like that. So he's going to end up marrying one of them, and he's in for a big surprise. And I can't tell you the rest of it. You're going to have to come back for that if you're not familiar with the story. To answer the previous question, Roberta says to have him rely on God for what he was to give. That's very possible. It could also have been a test as to whether or not he was going to find somebody. Yeah, I think those are great thoughts, Roberta. Very good. Well, we're going to end there tonight. Now, next Monday night, I will be traveling. So I'm going to have to, as much as I don't want to, I'm going to have to take next week off of Bible Study Hub. And I'll tell you why, because it's a happy celebration that I will be going to. My grandma Yativ, my dad's mom, turns 100. And she is having a party in Indianapolis. And so I couldn't not be there for it. So I'm taking off, and I'm going to go to her birthday party for her 100th birthday celebration. I can't wait to see my grandma. She's just been one of my best friends for such a very, very long time. My whole life, we've been so close. But I will be driving from Indianapolis back to Philadelphia next Monday, and I just don't want to have the stress of knowing that if we hit a traffic jam, I might be in trouble for Bible study. So I'm going to just take next week off. You can take it off too, obviously. And then we will reconvene the following Monday night, which I believe is the first Monday of October, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know how that's even possible. So I hope you have a good couple of weeks. I will look forward to seeing you when we all reconvene. Yeah, people are being so kind. Awesome. She is a treasure. Oh, she is a treasure, Dottie. I know you've met her before. Emily says, happy 100th birthday. God bless and enjoy. Yeah. So many nice comments. I appreciate every single one of you with your well wishes. I mean, how many people my age have a grandma who is still alive? Not very many at all. So I feel extremely, extremely blessed to have this matriarch of the family, this woman of God who has had such an impact on my life that I can go celebrate her 100th. All right. Well, I love you all. I pray for you. Keep putting your prayer requests up on our Facebook page. I think it's such a great way to just surround ourselves with people who care. Whether they've ever met you or not is completely beside the point. We're brothers and sisters in Christ. We care for each other. We pray for each other. And I know there's a lot of heavy stuff going on. So I do think of you very often. I bring your requests before the Lord, not just once, but multiple times. All right. Well, I'm going to end this. I love y'all, and I'll see you in 2 weeks for Bible Study Hub. Have a good one.